Hey guys, these next 12 tips are going to be regarding working out and training. So the first tip I want to offer you is try to avoid cherry picking content from other influencers. What they do is take pieces of information that they find other places, they recycle it and they emphasize it. And usually it comes with, getting more views because that's how YouTube is these days. You have to provide a lot of quantity if you want to be profitable. So now, don't get me wrong, there are some influencers out there that provide some good tips. They're usually people with new kinesiology degrees, or they're exercise scientists, or people with tons of background training a lot of clients and with a lot of experience. You kind of get the idea when someone's not a fitness professional and they're trying to offer you fitness tips. These are the people that I'm talking about. Okay, this is tip number 8. How much effort is needed to lose weight? So this is one of the biggest misconstrued areas that I've experienced as a personal trainer. A lot of people don't realize it takes a lot more effort. So first of all, let's start with how many calories does it take to burn 1 pound? And that's 3,500 calories. Now there's different forms of calories, liquid calories, solid calories. However, it's roughly the same ballpark. So 3,500 calories to expend 1 pound. Now that's a lot, especially for a 150-pound person. That's about 6 hours of cardio. So doing 6 hours of cardio will probably expend 3,500. So if you're trying to lose 1 pound per week, a lot of people don't want to put that effort of 6 hours per week. So what do? Well, you have to do a little bit of other things as well. Not only do cardio, you can strength train and you could reduce your intake. So let's put those 3 together. Let's say you perform cardio, 3 hours cardio, okay, per week, and then you reduce your calories by 500 per day, and then you strength train twice a week. Now you have a deficit. You are probably expending more than 3,500 calories per week. However, the constraints that a lot of people go through are miscalculating their calories, not doing enough cardio, because as you get better with cardio, your heart rate drops and you actually expend less calories. So number 3, which is strength training, is very important because you have the ability to tap into that afterburn. So when you strength train and you do it effectively, you lift heavy, your body has to repair itself, and it takes maybe 48 to 72 hours to do so. So through that process, you burn more calories, your oxygen intake and uptake is increased. So this is why strength training is very important if you want to lose weight. So let's look at the value of each one. Number 1 is cardio. Now, if you just do cardio and you don't change your food and you don't do any strength training, you just want to do cardio, then to expend 1 pound per week, it will take 6 hours of cardio. Now, let's say you just do number 2. You don't do cardio and you just reduce food. So not doing any type of extra exercise in your lifestyle, and you're just reducing food. Yes, you could lose weight. However, there's some detrimental effects because you are not putting on any muscle. You're not speeding up your metabolism. Okay. And there's detrimental effects that you're not getting the nutrients that you used to get. So you might start, you could get sick, you could get ill, you have a deficiency of some kind of nutrient that you used to get, and now you're not getting it. Okay, let's look at number 3. Let's say you just strength train. You don't do cardio and you don't want to reduce your calorie intake. You eat 2,000 calories per day, but you don't want to change that. You could still lose a significant amount of weight because strength training, if you do it correctly, you do it only 2 or 3 times a week, you have that afterburn. So the most valuable out of the 3 is strength training. However, I do recommend everyone that wants to lose weight to put all 3 aspects into your program. Of course, you have to do weight training. And then my suggestion is to do dedicated cardio along the side of that as a twofold program. Don't try and combine weight training and cardio together. It doesn't really work too well that way because your body's kind of confused on Should I burn calories? Should I get stronger? What should I do with this nutrient? Should I expend it or should I consume it to repair the muscles that I just, put the effort to try to put on? Weight training is very dynamic. That means it could be high intensity, it could be CrossFit, it could be low intensity, moderate intensity, it could be Pilates, could be yoga. So weight training is very dynamic, has a very dynamic range. Now, cardio is very simple. It's when you keep your heart rate in your zone, 75 to 85%. There's not much variety. So the reason why I said that is you adapt. So things like that you want to avoid. Once you adapt to a rhythmic motion, it becomes less effective. You become more efficient. So the caloric burn actually drops down. So to lose weight, you have to keep changing things, changing up things. And through weight training, you can do that because there's such a wide variety. Okay, tip number 10, measuring workout volume. Now, this is one of these areas where a lot of people don't have knowledge about. The most fitness professionals don't know what a workout volume is. However, if you know a little bit about my background, I am a powerlifter. I held a California state record. I'm also an Olympic weightlifter, and I've been to national and actually world competitions. I'm also a coach. However, what I'm trying to say is, as a coach, we are supposed to track how much volume you do per week. And it could be done with Excel spreadsheets by doing all this math. However, that's kind of a pain. So my app, eFitX, which has been around for 14 years, automatically does it for you. And it also divides volume into two categories. So let me kind of explain those two categories. Let's take a 120-pound female that could squat 100 pounds. She could do 8 reps. Let's say one set, 8 reps. Do the math, and that's 800. However, she's also capable of doing 200 pounds, 4 reps. She's a pretty strong chick. She could do 200 pounds, 4 reps. Now that equals 800 as well. So when you put these together, saying like, okay, I'm doing 800, same volume, not necessarily. So that 200 pounds is more intense on the body. It creates more principles, based on the principles of overload, it creates more blood flow into the muscle. And this creates a more neural demand, more recruitment of other extra muscle fibers. So that is what you want to tap into, is the recruitment of more muscle fibers. Therefore, you get more effective results in losing weight because you burn more calories within the next 4 days if you're tapping into heavier weights. Okay, tip number 11. So we spoke about volume in the last tip. We're going to talk about heavy versus moderate. How do you determine whether you're lifting heavy and whether you're doing moderate? Now, an easy method to determine this is if you're lifting 8 reps and you're doing 3 sets and there's muscle failure near the end of the 3rd set, that means you're lifting heavy. Okay, so you do your first set, you do 8, no problem. You do your second set, bench press 8, okay, no struggle. But on the 3rd set, you get to number 5, to number 6, and you barely finish 8, or you don't even finish 8. You stop at 7. That means you're lifting heavy. So that's how you determine heavy lifting for intermediates, beginners and intermediates. Now, if you're able to do 8 and you finish the 3rd set easily without no struggle, then you've probably chosen a weight that's too light for you. You want to get to a point where you're choosing 8 reps, where there's a struggle near the end. Even on the 2nd set sometimes, that means you are lifting heavy. Moderate lifting is usually 8 to 12 reps. So you just do the same perspective. However, you increase the reps to 12 reps. You should be struggling, though, near the end of the 3rd set if 3 sets are assigned to you. Okay, tip number 12, when to stop lifting heavy. Okay, for most males, it's never. It's like, okay, I want to get big, I want to get huge, I want to get big as a car. So you never stop lifting heavy for most guys. However, for females, it's a different story. It's very subjective. And the reason why I'm mentioning this tip is because most females do weight training and they put on muscle quicker and water, but they don't lose the fat in the process, so they start bulking up. However, once you start losing that fat at maybe the same rate you're putting on muscle, then you start shaping to the contours that are more desirable. Now, another way to determine this is actually to measure how do you stack up with other lifters. So not expecting everybody to look like a fitness model or bikini model. However, there are categories, and I use what's called strengthlevel.com. Okay, I'm endorsing strengthlevel.com. And you could be compared with a lot of other lifters within your age group, within your body weight. And you could choose any exercise like the squat, deadlift, bench press. There's so much data in there. And you'll be compared with other people that enter their data. Now, it's a little exaggerated because these are people that actually lift regularly. If you're a beginner, it may sound a little intimidated when you see some of the results. So there's different levels. There's beginner, novice, intermediate, advanced, and elite. And when you use this tool, you can determine like, okay, my bench press sucks. I'm only a beginner. Something you need to focus on because you don't want to be compared to other lifters and suck. You want to be like in the intermediate stage. Hopefully you want to be in the intermediate stage. Okay, tip number 13, master the basic movements. So what are the basic movements? So you have a bench press, maybe a seated row, lat pull down overhead press, squat, deadlift, leg curl, abdominal curl. I just mentioned 8 exercises. So with those 8 exercises, if you master all 8 of those, you could get into great shape. You don't need a lot of fancy exercises to get in great shape unless you are a bodybuilder, unless you play different sports and you need to improve specific muscle groups. But you could get into a desirable physique by just doing these 8 exercises. So remember, movements, there's not much of a difference. When you're pressing an incline press, they're very similar. When you go to the shoulder press and the chest press, now it's a little bit different. But remember, you're pushing up, pushing forward, pushing down. You also are pulling. You're pulling back. You're pulling down. Okay, you might be pulling up. But there's only so many movements that you could do. And with slight variations, you could really get into great shape. Tip number 14, time under tension. So fast reps, slow reps. If I do a curl and I take 3 seconds to do this curl, there's a 3 seconds of tension, assuming that there's no break and I have continuous load on that muscle. Now, if I do it 1 second, I'll have 1 second time of tension. So there's a big difference. And when you see people doing fast motions, first of all, you try and figure out what their goal is. If they're playing sports, you need fast movements. So the time under tension is very little. You want explosive movements. However, if you want to lose weight, the magic number is usually around 3 seconds. So when you do an exercise, for example, shoulder press, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, that's about right. You want to do 3 to 4 second repetitions, and this is going to create enough muscle tension to develop. Now, if you want to do things fast, you only wake up a certain amount of muscle fibers, and you keep waking up the same muscle fibers over and over as you keep doing it fast. So maybe good personal trainers will mix it up and have you do a combination of both as they get to know you more. They may have you do a routine that has fast repetitions, some of them with slower repetitions. Okay, this is tip number 15, understanding levers. So what is a lever? Your limbs are levers. So this is my arm. This is a lever. My leg, can't see my leg right now, but that is a lever as well. So your limbs are levers. And why is it important? Because it affects the way muscle fibers develop within that muscle group. Also affects the weight. So for example, if I have a long lever and let's say I'm doing a lateral raise, okay, long lever, the weight is at the end of my arm. That is a long lever from the origin to all the way to the load. You have a long lever, okay? However, if I shorten the lever, I bend my arm and I do a lateral raise this way, I'm bringing the load closer to the origin, which actually reduces the weight. So if I'm holding 20 pounds and doing a lateral raise, and then I bend my arm about halfway, it's roughly halfway between your shoulder and your elbow versus your elbow to your arm. So when you reduce the lever, you're actually dividing the weight in half in this case. So I'm holding a 20-pound dumbbell doing a lateral raise. I cut it in half. I'm actually lifting only 10 pounds. So of course, when you work out, you record it as lateral raise. I'm doing 10 pounds, but you should do it the same way every single time so you don't, have a discrepancy. Now, the other thing is when you do a fly, and this is a long lever, the load is at your hand. This is the point of origin, is your pectoralis major usually. And when you do this, you develop different muscle fibers within your pec zone. So a longer lever can mean different muscle fibers firing versus a bench press, which actually works your chest as well. You're shortening the lever, so you're only activating a certain amount of specific muscle fibers. So that's the difference between levers, and every coach should now emphasize, they should start emphasizing implementing levers into the program. Make sure you cover long levers, short levers, narrow levers. For example, row, that's a narrow lever because you are bringing the load really close to the joint. Okay, this is tip number 16. Compound exercises are more effective than doing selective muscle exercises. Meaning, well, the meaning of compound is two or joints within the structure, two or more. So for example, if you're just doing a bicep curl, you're actually only using your elbow joint. Okay, that's not a compound exercise. You're doing a shoulder press, you are working your shoulder joint and your elbow joint. So those are two joints that are moving. You're working a lot more muscles. This is one reason why it's more effective, because you want the muscles to work together. When they work together, they tend to complement each other. So for example, on a shoulder press, the deltoid is working, but I also have my triceps participating and helping the deltoid, perform the exercise. On the other hand, when you do a lateral raise, you only have the deltoid, you subtract the tricep. So you only have those fibers helping contribute to lift the weight. But compound exercises are also more functional in the daily life. You don't really try and lift something over your head like this. You actually keep it close to your body and you lift over your head. If you're going to put something on top of a shelf in the kitchen, you're not going to lift with an extended arm. So compound movements are very important in your program. Okay, tip number 17, keep your joints balanced. So your hip joints and shoulder joints are very complex. They're ball and socket joints, and they move in many different directions. They move up, and they could create an actual circle. So these joints need to be balanced. For example, if you do too many exercises in front of you, you're working too many chests, you're probably working too many of your pecs, and you are tightening up those muscles, and you're actually deviating the alignment of your joint, meaning you're losing range of motion. So a lot of people, you can do this right now, is how much range of motion do you have? See, I'm a guy that's behind his computer a lot, but look how far my shoulder blades can move. Now you're going to see people that work in front of them too much, that don't do enough pulling exercises, their movements are limited. So keeping your joints balanced prevents injuries. For example, if that joint becomes too tight, once you reach back and you fall down and you are forced to move that arm back, that's when tears happen. So this goes for your hips. You need to move your hips in all directions. Now, how do you know where in your balance? So you could determine this. I actually have stuff on my application, EFIDX, that kind of gives you an idea if you're balanced or not. But when, for example, I could bench press 200 pounds easily, maybe 8 reps. Should I pull the opposite movement, 200 pounds? Not necessarily. If you can, you are fairly balanced, but 180 row versus a 200 push is fairly balanced. So you have to work with certain attributes that are close. Same thing with the hamstrings and the front of your leg. The front of your leg, if you could leg curl 160 pounds, 8 reps, you should probably curl 140 pounds doing a leg curl, prone leg curl. So make sure the machines are collaborated right. So balanced is very important. It helps keep your posture and avoids deviations in the future as well. Tip number 18, don't do too many fancy exercises. So a thruster is a fancy exercise, a popular exercise, and it's great. However, you know what a thruster is, right? You hold dumbbells or a barbell. You go into a squat and then you press overhead. So that's a thruster. Now, when you do a thruster, people think, oh, I'm doing 2 for 1. I'm getting a squat and a shoulder press at the same time. In a way, you are. However, the effectiveness is reduced because your blood flow is limited. You don't have extra blood in your body. So blood flow that carries all the nutrients and ATP, the glycogen to create ATP, is divided. So when you do a squat, some of the blood flow goes to your legs, and then as you go up, it requires more blood flow to get the shoulder press done. So when you have that blood flow flowing in too many different areas, it doesn't really put a lot of focus into that muscle group that you want to train. So you're probably better off just doing the squats alone and then immediately go into a shoulder press where you could actually transfer the blood flow into a different part of the body. So there's a lot of fancy exercises where coaches want to be creative because they want to keep you interested and I don't know what it could be. It could be like a back lunge to a row to a shoulder press. So there's so many different things that you could do to make it interesting, which is okay, but don't make that your primary workout. Workouts where you're isolated, where you're doing compound exercises, where it's a natural movement of moving, those are great exercises. But when you get too fancy, you kind of deviate or you kind of lose the quality of the training within that muscle.